The Clancy family lived in Duxbury, Massachusetts, in a beautiful, large home they had worked hard to buy and furnish. Lindsay Clancy, a 32-year-old nurse-midwife, was on maternity leave, caring for her 3 children. Her husband, Patrick Clancy, was a dedicated father and supportive partner. Their children were the center of their lives. Cora, the eldest, was 5 years old, full of energy and curiosity. Dawson, their 3-year-old son, was known for his playful nature and love for his big sister. The youngest, Callan, was just 8 months old, a cheerful baby adored by his parents and siblings. On social media, Lindsay often shared snapshots of their life, painting a picture of an ideal family. Smiling photos of family outings, children's birthdays, and cozy moments at home created an image of happiness and contentment. Friends and followers saw a loving mother and devoted father doing their best to provide a joyful and nurturing environment for their kids. Lindsay's career as a nurse-midwife added to the admiration she received. Her colleagues respected her dedication and skill, and she was known for her compassionate care for new mothers and babies. Patrick, a hard-working professional, balanced his job with family life, ensuring he was present and involved in his children's upbringing. From the outside, the Clancys seemed to have everything: a loving marriage, beautiful children, and a supportive community. Their life appeared perfect, making the tragic events of January 24, 2023, even more shocking and incomprehensible. The facade of perfection masked underlying struggles that would soon unravel in a heart-wrenching manner. The Clancy's home in Duxbury, Massachusetts, was a picture of suburban charm. Nestled on a quiet street, the large house boasted a manicured lawn and a welcoming front porch. Inside, the decor was warm and inviting, filled with family photos, children's drawings, and cozy furniture that spoke of comfort and love. Lindsay Clancy frequently shared glimpses of their life on social media. Her posts featured smiling children, playful moments in the yard, and family gatherings around the dining table. The images portrayed a serene, happy family life. Cora and Dawson playing in the yard, building snowmen in winter, and celebrating birthdays were common themes. The arrival of baby Callan added even more joy to their posts, with pictures of his chubby cheeks and bright smile. From the outside looking in, the Clancy's life seemed idyllic, a perfect family living in a beautiful home, surrounded by love and happiness. Lindsay Clancy, 32, was a dedicated nurse-midwife known for her compassionate care. Her husband, Patrick Clancy, balanced his professional life with being a present and involved father. The couple had 3 children. Cora, the eldest at 5, was energetic and curious. Dawson, their 3-year-old son, was playful and full of life, always ready to join his sister in adventures. Callan, just 8 months old, was a cheerful baby who brought joy to everyone around him. The Clancys were a tight-knit family. Lindsay and Patrick prioritized their children's happiness and well-being, often seen participating in family activities together. They worked hard to create a nurturing environment, evident in their daily routines and the close bond they shared. Their social media profiles reflected a family deeply connected and committed to each other, enhancing their image as a perfect, loving household. Lindsay Clancy had a history of mental health struggles that began with a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder. Despite this, she maintained her role as a dedicated nurse-midwife and a loving mother. After the birth of her 3rd child, Callan, Lindsay began to experience severe postpartum depression. She reported feeling overwhelmed and disconnected, often battling intrusive thoughts and intense anxiety. Her condition worsened over time, leading to hospitalization on January 1, 2023, for suicidal thoughts. Lindsay spent 5 days in the hospital, receiving intensive care and support. Upon discharge, she was prescribed a regimen of medications, including antidepressants. However, the treatment plan was frequently adjusted, with some medications being canceled and replaced, contributing to instability in her mental state. Lindsay participated in an outpatient psychological support program, which initially showed promising results. She began to sleep better, smile more, and engage actively in caring for her children. Friends and family noticed her apparent improvement as she seemed more present and involved in daily activities. Yet, beneath the surface, Lindsay continued to struggle, feeling immense pressure to maintain the facade of a perfect mother and wife. These underlying issues would eventually culminate in the tragic events of January 24, 2023. On the morning of January 24, 2023, Lindsay Clancy woke up in a seemingly good mood. She took Cora to a pediatrician appointment, engaging in typical mother-daughter conversations. After returning home, Lindsay spent time playing outside with Cora and Dawson, building a snowman in the yard. The children laughed and played, enjoying the fresh air and the simple joy of a snowy day. Throughout the day, Lindsay appeared attentive and engaged. She texted her mother, searched for remedies for one of the children's minor stomach issues, and looked up takeout options for dinner. Around 5:10 p.m., she called a local restaurant to place an order. When Patrick left for the pharmacy and to pick up the food at 5:15 p.m., Lindsay assured him everything was fine at home. Their brief phone call at 5:33 p.m. was uneventful, with Lindsay sounding busy but calm. From all outward appearances, it was a normal day filled with routine family activities and care. At 4 p.m., Lindsay Clancy texted her mother, discussing minor issues and remedies for her children's stomach problems. She also begins searching online for takeout options for dinner. At 5:10 p.m., Lindsay places an order with a local restaurant, finalizing their dinner plans. At 5:15 p.m., Patrick Clancy leaves the house to pick up the takeout and stop by the pharmacy. Before leaving, he checks in with Lindsay, who assures him that everything is fine at home. At 5:33 p.m., Patrick calls Lindsay while at the pharmacy. She sounds busy and ends the call after 14 seconds, not giving any indication of distress. At 5:37 p.m., Patrick leaves the pharmacy and heads to the restaurant to collect their order. At 5:54 p.m., Patrick arrives at the restaurant and picks up the takeout, ready to return home. At 6 p.m., Patrick arrives back at their home. Noticing an eerie silence, he begins to sense something is wrong. At 6:09 p.m., Patrick calls Lindsay, but receives no answer. He enters the house, discovering bloodstains and signs of a struggle. He then finds Lindsay outside, severely injured from a fall from the second-floor window. She confesses to trying to kill herself. At 6:11 p.m., Patrick calls 911, frantic and desperate for help. He reports his wife's injuries and expresses concern for his children, whom he cannot locate. As emergency services arrive, the paramedics quickly begin treating Lindsay for her injuries. Meanwhile, Patrick frantically searches the house for his children. Lindsay tells him they are in the basement. Patrick rushes to the basement and finds Cora, Dawson, and Callan unresponsive, with ribbons around their necks, indicating they had been strangled. He calls out for help as he tries to revive them. Despite the immediate medical intervention, Cora and Dawson are pronounced dead shortly after arriving at the hospital. Callan, the youngest, clings to life for 3 days before succumbing to his injuries. Aftermath: Lindsay is taken to the hospital for her injuries and placed under police custody. She is later charged with the first-degree murder of her 3 children. The community is left in shock, grappling with the incomprehensible tragedy that has shattered the Clancy family. Upon arriving home at 6 p.m., Patrick Clancy immediately sensed something was wrong. The usually lively house was eerily quiet. He called Lindsay's phone, but there was no answer. Growing increasingly worried, Patrick entered the house and was shocked to find bloodstains leading towards the backyard. Rushing outside, he found Lindsay lying on the ground, severely injured from a fall from the second-floor window. She was conscious, but in immense pain. Through tears and gasps, she confessed to trying to kill herself. Patrick, in a state of panic, asked about their children. Lindsay, with a haunting calmness, told him they were in the basement. Emergency services arrived quickly, tending to Lindsay's injuries. Paramedics worked to stabilize her as Patrick, driven by a father's worst fears, ran to the basement. There, he found Cora, Dawson, and Callan, unconscious and lifeless, with ribbons around their necks. The scene was devastating. He desperately tried to revive them, his heart breaking with each passing moment. Paramedics soon joined Patrick in the basement, taking over the attempts to save the children. Despite their best efforts, Cora and Dawson were pronounced dead shortly after arriving at the hospital. Callan, the youngest, fought for his life, but tragically passed away 3 days later. Lindsay was taken to the hospital under police custody, her injuries severe but not life-threatening. She was later charged with the first-degree murder of her 3 children, as the community and the nation grappled with the horror of the events that had unfolded in the Clancy home. Lindsay Clancy admitted to taking the lives of her 3 children in a heartbreaking and horrific manner. On January 24, 2023, after ensuring her husband Patrick would be out of the house, she carried out her plan. Lindsay used ribbons to strangle Cora, Dawson, and Callan. Each child was found with a ribbon around their neck, indicating a deliberate and calculated act. Upon being discovered by Patrick, and later questioned by the authorities, Lindsay confessed to her actions. She revealed that she had also attempted to take her own life by cutting her wrists and jumping from a second-floor window, leading to her severe injuries. Lindsay's explanation for her actions was deeply troubling. She claimed that voices in her head had forced her to commit the unimaginable acts. Lindsay's defense pointed to severe postpartum depression and psychosis as the driving forces behind her actions. Her lawyer argued that improper treatment and a lack of adequate mental health support exacerbated her condition, leading to the tragic outcome. The voices she described were a manifestation of her deteriorating mental state, pushing her to the brink of sanity and beyond. This case raises profound questions about mental health, the pressures faced by mothers, and the tragic consequences that can arise when those pressures become unbearable. The investigation into the Clancy case uncovered significant evidence that provided insight into Lindsay's state of mind and the tragic events of January 24, 2023. Among the critical pieces of evidence were Lindsay's personal diary and her statements during psychologist interviews. Lindsay's diary, meticulously detailed, chronicled her daily life, struggles, and emotional state. However, it notably lacked any mention of hallucinations or delusions, which were later claimed to have driven her actions. This absence raised suspicions among investigators about the authenticity of her defense. Psychologist interviews revealed a different narrative. Lindsay claimed that voices had commanded her to kill her children and herself. These interviews highlighted her severe mental distress and provided a potential explanation for her actions. However, the prosecution argued that these claims were fabricated to avoid punishment, suggesting that her actions reflected careful planning rather than impulsive behavior driven by psychosis. Additional evidence included surveillance footage from the Clancy home, which confirmed Patrick's absence during the murders and Lindsay's calm demeanor leading up to the crime. This footage, combined with her internet search history and text messages, painted a complex picture of a woman struggling with immense internal turmoil. The collected evidence became central to the legal battle, with the prosecution and defense interpreting it to support their opposing narratives of premeditation versus mental illness. Lindsay Clancy was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of her children, Cora, Dawson, and Callan. The gravity of these charges meant that she faced the possibility of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The legal battle that ensued focused heavily on Lindsay's mental state and the events leading up to the tragedy. Lindsay's defense team argued that she was suffering from severe postpartum depression and psychosis at the time of the murders. They presented evidence of her mental health history, including her hospitalization for suicidal thoughts earlier in January 2023 and her ongoing struggles with anxiety and depression. The defense highlighted the changes in her medication regimen, suggesting that improper treatment had exacerbated her condition. Central to the defense's argument was Lindsay's claim that voices in her head had driven her to commit the murders. Her lawyer argued that these auditory hallucinations were a symptom of her psychosis, making her incapable of understanding the nature or consequences of her actions. They sought to have her committed to a psychiatric facility rather than serve a prison sentence. The prosecution, however, contended that Lindsay's actions were premeditated and deliberate. They pointed to the absence of any mention of hallucinations in her diary, suggesting that her defense was fabricated to avoid punishment. The prosecution highlighted the meticulous nature of the crime, arguing that Lindsay's calm demeanor and detailed planning, such as ensuring Patrick's absence, indicated clear intent. They presented evidence from the crime scene, her internet search history, and surveillance footage, which they argued contradicted her claims of psychosis. The prosecution aimed to prove that Lindsay had planned the murders and was fully aware of her actions, thus deserving the maximum penalty under the law. During the initial court proceedings, both sides presented their preliminary evidence and arguments. The courtroom was tense, filled with emotional testimonies from family members and experts. Lindsay appeared in court, visibly affected by the ordeal, as her legal team laid the groundwork for a complex and deeply contentious trial. The case drew significant media attention, with public opinion sharply divided. As the trial progressed, the focus remained on Lindsay's mental state and the devastating impact of her actions on the Clancy family and their community. The courtroom drama in Lindsay Clancy's trial was intense, filled with emotional testimonies and sharp cross-examinations that captivated public attention. The trial began with powerful opening statements from both the defense and the prosecution. The defense painted a picture of a loving mother overwhelmed by mental illness, while the prosecution depicted Lindsay as a calculating individual who meticulously planned the murders. Key moments included testimonies from mental health experts. The defense called upon psychiatrists who had treated Lindsay, describing her severe postpartum depression and psychosis. They provided detailed accounts of her suicidal thoughts, her erratic behavior, and the auditory hallucinations she claimed to experience. These experts argued that Lindsay's mental state rendered her incapable of rational decision-making. During cross-examination, the prosecution challenged these testimonies, questioning the consistency of Lindsay's symptoms and the absence of documented hallucinations in her diary. They suggested that Lindsay's accounts were inconsistent and possibly fabricated to support her defense. One of the most emotional moments was Patrick Clancy's testimony. He spoke about his wife's struggles with mental health, the changes he observed in her behavior, and the love she had for their children. His testimony provided a heartfelt perspective, illustrating the deep bond within the family and the shock of the tragic events. The prosecution presented evidence from the crime scene, including the ribbons used to strangle the children and surveillance footage showing Lindsay's calm demeanor before the crime. They also highlighted her internet search history, which included searches on methods of suicide and inquiries about psychosis, suggesting premeditation. Lindsay's diary entries were scrutinized in court. The prosecution emphasized the lack of mention of hallucinations, arguing that her writings indicated clear awareness of her actions and a level of planning inconsistent with psychosis. In closing arguments, the defense reiterated Lindsay's mental health struggles, urging the jury to consider her psychological state and the lack of adequate treatment. The prosecution, however, insisted on the calculated nature of the crime, arguing that Lindsay was fully aware of her actions and their consequences. The jury was left to deliberate on these conflicting narratives, weighing the evidence of severe mental illness against the evidence of premeditation and planning. The Lindsay Clancy case sparked widespread debate and intense public scrutiny. Opinions were sharply divided over Lindsay's mental state and the nature of her crime. Some members of the community and the public sympathized with Lindsay, viewing her as a victim of severe postpartum depression and psychosis. They argued that her mental health struggles, compounded by inadequate treatment, led to a tragic and unintentional outcome. Others, however, were less sympathetic. They focused on the premeditated aspects of the crime, such as the meticulous planning and the absence of documented hallucinations. These individuals believed that Lindsay's actions were deliberate and calculated, deserving of the harshest legal penalties. The community of Duxbury was deeply affected by the tragedy. The once seemingly perfect family story shocked neighbors and friends, leaving them to grapple with the horrifying reality of the events. Vigils and memorials were held for the children as the community mourned the profound loss and struggled to understand the complexities of mental health and criminal responsibility. The media coverage of the Lindsay Clancy case was extensive and often sensationalized, reflecting the public's intense interest in the tragedy. Major news outlets and true crime programs picked up the story, broadcasting the details of the crime, the legal proceedings, and Lindsay's mental health struggles. Headlines ranged from empathetic portrayals of a mother in crisis to harsh condemnations of her actions. Television segments featured expert panels discussing postpartum depression and psychosis, trying to shed light on the complexities of Lindsay's mental state. Interviews with mental health professionals, legal experts, and community members added various perspectives to the narrative. Some programs focused on the systemic failures in mental health care, arguing that Lindsay's tragedy highlighted a broader societal issue. Social media also played a significant role in the coverage, with users debating the case on platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. True crime enthusiasts dissected every detail, and hashtags related to the case trended as new developments emerged. Public interest in the case remained high, driven by its shocking nature and the emotional elements involved. Updates on Lindsay's legal status, court appearances, and new evidence were closely followed, keeping the story in the spotlight and fueling ongoing discussions about mental health, justice, and the responsibilities of caregivers and the healthcare system. Lindsay Clancy was known as a dedicated and compassionate nurse-midwife, deeply committed to her profession and her family. Friends and colleagues described her as kind-hearted, attentive, and always willing to go the extra mile for her patients. At home, she was a loving mother, actively involved in her children's lives and their daily activities. However, Lindsay's struggle with mental health began to overshadow her life, especially after the birth of her third child, Callan. Initially diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, she later insisted she was suffering from postpartum depression. Her behavior began to change, marked by episodes of deep sadness, overwhelming anxiety, and feelings of disconnect from her family. Despite seeking help and undergoing various treatments, Lindsay's condition fluctuated. She experienced moments of apparent improvement, participating in an outpatient psychological support program and showing signs of recovery. Friends and family noted she seemed happier, more engaged, and better rested. However, these periods of normalcy were interspersed with severe depressive episodes and suicidal thoughts. Lindsay's personality, once vibrant and caring, became overshadowed by her internal battles. Her ultimate actions on January 24, 2023, revealed the depths of her mental anguish, challenging the perceptions of those who knew her and prompting a reevaluation of her mental health journey and the support she received. Patrick Clancy's world was shattered on January 24, 2023. As a devoted husband and father, he had always been deeply involved in his family's life, balancing his professional responsibilities with a strong commitment to his wife and children. Patrick was known for his supportive nature, often seen participating in family activities and providing a stable presence at home. The events of that tragic day plunged him into a nightmare. Discovering Lindsay's injuries and the lifeless bodies of his children was an unimaginable horror. Patrick's immediate reaction, captured in his frantic 911 call, revealed his desperation and heartbreak. His emotional testimony in court further illustrated the profound love he had for his family and the overwhelming grief he endured. In the aftermath, Patrick struggled to make sense of the tragedy. Publicly, he expressed a mix of sorrow, confusion, and a deep sense of loss. His journey became a poignant part of the story, highlighting the devastating impact of mental health issues not just on individuals, but on their loved ones as well. Patrick's resilience and his quest for understanding underscored the human cost of the tragedy, evoking empathy and sorrow from the community and beyond. Detective Thompson led the investigation into the Clancy case. Known for her meticulous attention to detail and compassion, she worked tirelessly to uncover the truth behind the tragedy. Her dedication ensured that all aspects of the case were thoroughly examined. Prosecutor Davis was tasked with presenting the case against Lindsay Clancy. His approach was firm, emphasizing the evidence suggesting premeditation. He aimed to secure a conviction that reflected the severity of the crime. Defense attorney Miller represented Lindsay, focusing on her severe postpartum depression and psychosis. She passionately argued that Lindsay's mental health struggles played a crucial role in the events, advocating for treatment over punishment. These key figures played pivotal roles in the legal proceedings, each bringing their expertise and perspectives to the complex case. The trial of Lindsay Clancy concluded with a verdict that reflected the complexity of the case. After lengthy deliberations, the jury found Lindsay guilty of first-degree murder, acknowledging the severe nature of her actions. However, the court also recognized her profound mental health struggles. Lindsay was sentenced to life imprisonment, with the possibility of parole contingent on continued psychiatric evaluation and treatment. This balanced approach aimed to address both the need for justice and the importance of mental health care. Currently, Lindsay Clancy remains in custody, receiving ongoing psychiatric treatment. Her case has sparked widespread discussions about postpartum mental health and the support systems available to mothers. The tragic loss of Cora, Dawson, and Callan continues to resonate deeply within the community, serving as a poignant reminder of the critical need for mental health awareness and intervention. The Lindsay Clancy case underscores the profound impact of mental health issues on individuals and families. It highlights the urgent need for better mental health support and resources, particularly for postpartum mothers. The tragedy revealed gaps in the healthcare system, where Lindsay's severe postpartum depression and psychosis went inadequately addressed, leading to devastating consequences. The crime's impact on the community of Duxbury was profound. The Clancy family's story, once a beacon of suburban happiness, turned into a harrowing cautionary tale. The community, reeling from the loss, came together to support Patrick Clancy and to honor the memories of Cora, Dawson, and Callan. This case has ignited broader conversations about the importance of mental health care, the stigma surrounding mental illness, and the need for comprehensive support systems for new mothers. It serves as a somber reminder of the critical role mental health plays in the well-being of families and communities. Thank you for watching this detailed exploration of the Lindsay Clancy case. This tragic story highlights the critical importance of mental health awareness and support. What are your thoughts on how mental health issues should be addressed to prevent such tragedies? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this video insightful, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth true crime stories. Stay safe and take care of each other.